The city never sleeps, they say. But in the middle of Manhattan, just a few steps away from Fifth Avenue's glowing stores and polished glass towers, someone had no choice but to sleep. A man lay curled on the cold concrete, his body shivering against the night breeze, his face hidden beneath a torn hoodie. His skin was dark, his frame thin, his lips cracked as though they hadn't touched clean water in days. Most people passing by didn't give him more than a glance. Some slowed down, frowned, then hurried away. Others wrinkled their noses, pulling their coats tighter, whispering to companions that he was probably another addict, another wasted life on New York sidewalks. A group of college kids laughed cruelly as one of them tossed an empty soda cup near him. The man didn't respond. He couldn't. What no one knew was that his body wasn't failing because of drugs. He hadn't injected, smoked, or swallowed anything illicit. He was suffering from something far simpler, crueler and invisible to the eye: food poisoning. Desperate for survival, he had been scavenging trash bins behind restaurants, scraping together half-eaten burgers, leftover noodles, and stale pizza. For days, that's all he had consumed. His stomach had twisted itself into knots, his body rejecting every bite, leaving him in agony. On the same pavement where Wall Street, bankers strode by without a glance, but still, between groans, he lifted a trembling hand.
Please.
His voice cracked like a whisper stolen by the wind. Somebody help me. No one stopped. Cars rolled by, headlights flashing across his figure, like he was nothing more than another piece of trash lying on the curb. People saw him, judged him, and moved on. That was New York's cruel rhythm. Millions in pursuit of success. Millions ignoring the fallen. Except that night someone did stop, though not in the way the man expected. Inside a sleek black Mercedes parked just a few feet away, a pair of sharp eyes studied him. The driver wasn't a chauffeur. He was the owner. His perfectly fitted suit hugged his frame, a silk tie resting neatly against his shirt. His jaw was tight, his gaze unreadable. He was handsome, polished, and powerful. The kind of man whose face could easily appear on the cover of Forbes. His name was Alexander Rhodes. 6 months ago, Alexander's private tech conglomerate, Rhodes International, had been ranked the #1 company in America, a crown jewel in global business. Today, it didn't even crack the top 50. A storm of lawsuits, fraud allegations, environmental violations, tax evasion had dragged the empire into the mud. Billions evaporated overnight. Shareholders fled. His reputation went from visionary to villain almost instantly. But Alexander knew the truth. The cases were lies. Carefully orchestrated attacks, designed by enemies who wanted to see him burn. And as he sat there, watching the broken man on the sidewalk, he wondered if the universe was mocking him, reminding him how quickly power and dignity could be stripped away. The laughter of another passerby rang out as a young man kicked the homeless figure with his sneaker before strutting off. Alexander's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He saw the dark-skinned man groan, curling into himself, while others streamed past, indifferent. For reasons he couldn't fully explain, Alexander unlocked his door, stepped out, and approached. "Hey," he said quietly, crouching beside the figure. The man's eyelids fluttered open, his pupils dilated in pain. His lips trembled as he whispered again, "Help me." Alexander hesitated only for a moment, then slid his arms under the man's frail body, hoisting him carefully onto his shoulder. People nearby stopped to stare, confused, shocked, even disgusted. But Alexander didn't care. He carried the man back to his Mercedes, eased him into the leather seat, and shut the door. He started the engine and pulled away from the curb, aiming straight for St. Luke's Hospital. That was the night when two broken men, one scorned by society, the other betrayed by it, would collide in a way neither of them could ever predict. The hum of the Mercedes engine was steady, but Alexander's pulse wasn't. His thoughts raced as he glanced at the man slumped in the passenger seat. The dim streetlights painted his face in shifting shadows. His hoodie was torn, his jeans stained, his sneakers barely holding together. He looked like any other homeless man in the city. Yet something about him was different. Alexander had helped plenty of people before. Charity galas, $1-million donations, food drives. He had always been generous, at least in public. But lifting this man from the sidewalk with his own hands felt strangely personal. And for a moment, it scared him. Stay with me, Alexander muttered as he sped toward the hospital. You're going to be fine. The man stirred, his voice a rasp. No, hospital. Alexander shot him a look. What do you mean, no hospital? You need help. I don't, the man said, stronger this time, almost with authority. He sat up straighter, as if the weakness had suddenly drained from him. His breathing evened out, his eyes sharpening in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. I'm fine. Alexander frowned. You were lying on the street half dead. The man's lips curled into the faintest smirk. I was lying, yes, but not the way you think. A chill crept down Alexander's spine. He pulled the car over near a quiet intersection, turning toward his passenger. Who are you? The man pushed back his hood, revealing sharp cheekbones, piercing brown eyes, and a calm intensity that didn't belong to a beggar. My name isn't important. What matters is this. I know exactly who you are, Mr. Rhodes. Alexander froze. The stranger leaned closer, lowering his voice. You think your company fell because of those lawsuits. You think it's just competitors and jealous enemies, but it's bigger than that. You're being targeted systematically, and I've been watching you for weeks. Alexander's heart thudded in his chest. He wanted to laugh it off, call the man delusional, but something in his tone, controlled, steady, confident, stripped away that option. How do you know any of this? The stranger's gaze didn't waver. Because I'm not homeless. I'm undercover, Federal Bureau of Investigation. He let the words hang in the air like a knife. FBI Special Operations. 15 days ago, I was planted in this district under deep cover. My orders were to monitor certain corporations, yours included. Alexander's grip on the wheel tightened. So what, you're investigating me? The man shook his head. No, I was investigating the people framing you, the so-called whistleblowers, the law firms that suddenly discovered fraud, the shadow groups funding the media smear campaign. All of it traces back to a network that once Rhodes International destroyed. Alexander's mouth went dry. For months he had screamed the same thing, on news interviews, in courtrooms, to anyone who would listen. No one believed him. Yet here was a stranger, a man he had just pulled off the sidewalk, speaking his truth with unnerving certainty. You're telling me the FBI knows I'm innocent? Alexander asked cautiously. The man tilted his head. Officially? No, unofficially. His lips curved again, just slightly. Let's just say I can make the right files disappear. I can erase the false charges. I can end this war against you before it buries you alive. For a moment, Alexander could only stare. The air inside the car felt charged, heavy, as if fate itself had stepped in. Finally, Alexander whispered, "Why are you telling me this?" The man's expression hardened. "Because tonight you helped me. You lifted me when no one else would. That counts for something. And in this city, trust is the rarest currency there is." He leaned back in the seat, eyes narrowing as though weighing Alexander's soul. "So the question is, Mr. Rhodes, do you want my help? Or do you want to keep pretending you can fight this battle alone?" Alexander sat in silence, his knuckles pale as he gripped the steering wheel. Outside the windshield, New York carried on as if nothing extraordinary was happening. Horns blared, neon signs flashed, taxis swerved, and yet, inside the Mercedes, the world had shifted on its axis. He finally broke the silence. "If you're FBI, prove it." The man didn't flinch. He reached into the inner pocket of his ragged hoodie. Alexander's muscles tensed, half expecting a weapon, but instead, the man pulled out a thin black wallet. Inside was a badge, silver, official, cold under the glow of the dashboard light. Alexander stared, his throat tightening. It looked real, too real. The man slid it back into his hoodie. "Satisfied?" "Not even close," Alexander muttered. "You expect me to believe you've been, what, playing homeless to spy on me?" "Not just you," the agent replied calmly. "I've been watching the network that once you destroyed. Do you know how many times your name came up in their encrypted chatter? How many meetings centered on eliminating you as competition? You were marked the day you reached #1 on the global charts." Alexander's jaw clenched. Deep down, he had known. The speed of his downfall was too precise, too calculated. No corporation collapses overnight without a hand pulling the strings. The agent leaned forward. "But here's the truth you need to hear. Your enemies didn't just want to cripple Rhodes International. They wanted to make you a public warning. To every other CEO who might dream too big, threaten the wrong partners, or refuse to play their game. You were chosen to be humiliated. Alexander's chest burned with fury. And you what? You're offering me salvation? Just like that? The agent's eyes narrowed. Not just like that. Everything has a price. The words cut deeper than Alexander expected. He had spent a lifetime in boardrooms, where deals lived and died on that single principle. Trust, loyalty, success, everything had a cost. So what was the cost here? The car went quiet again, save for the hum of the idling engine. Then in a low voice, the agent said, "You give me one thing, and I'll make this go away. Every lawsuit, every false headline. I'll wipe the slate clean." Alexander turned his head, suspicion flashing in his eyes. "And what exactly is it you want from me?" The agent's stare was unwavering. "Access. Full access to your company's inner systems, servers, communication logs, financial records. I need everything, not to take you down, but to trace the fingerprints of those who framed you. If I expose them, I can end this war." Alexander's instincts screamed. He had trusted men before, and it had cost him billions. And yet, staring into the agent's hardened gaze, he felt something he hadn't in months. Possibility. "What happens if I say no?" Alexander asked, his voice cold. The agent leaned back slowly, folding his arms. "Then you'll keep fighting alone. And in 6 months, maybe less, Rhodes International will be nothing but a forgotten name in corporate history. You'll be a headline, a cautionary tale. The man who had everything and lost it all." Alexander's hands trembled on the wheel. He had spent his life calculating risks, weighing profits against losses. But this wasn't business. This was survival. Finally, he exhaled. "All right, you'll have access. But if you cross me, you'll know," the agent finished, a flicker of amusement crossing his face. "But I won't, because our enemies are the same." Alexander met his gaze. For the first time in months, he felt a spark of something unfamiliar. Not hope, no, not yet, but the beginning of it. The man in rags wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was a weapon, and Alexander Rhodes had just decided to wield it. 2 weeks later, the headlines changed. All major cases against Rhodes International dropped. Federal judge dismisses fraud allegations. Alexander Rhodes clears his name. Overnight, the storm vanished. The same media outlets that had crucified Alexander now ran glossy. Photos of him stepping out of court, chin high, suit impeccable, flanked by lawyers who smiled as if they'd engineered the miracle themselves. His company's stock, once crumbling like a sandcastle in the tide, began to soar again. Investors came crawling back. Competitors who had celebrated his downfall now scrambled to explain why Rhodes International was alive and thriving. Alexander knew the truth. None of this was the lawyers. None of this was luck. It was the man from the sidewalk. The homeless stranger had slipped into his offices unseen, combed through his servers, and traced the rotten trail. Within days, names surfaced. Rival CEOs, corrupt attorneys, even political figures, each one with dirty hands in the campaign against Rhodes International. Somehow, evidence landed on the desks of judges and federal prosecutors. Files disappeared. False witnesses recanted. Charges collapsed like dominoes. And through it all, Alexander never saw him again. Not once. He tried. Oh, he searched, calling in favors, hiring private investigators, even driving the same streets where he had first found him. But the man had vanished into the city like smoke. Until one evening. It was late, long after a board meeting, when Alexander stepped out of his office tower and into the crisp night air. Fifth Avenue buzzed with life. Street performers drumming, tourists taking pictures, taxis honking in frustration. He loosened his tie, slipping into the crowd, just another man in a city of millions. And that's when he saw him, a figure across the street, hood drawn, head lowered, standing perfectly still while the crowd flowed around him. Their eyes met, just for a second. Alexander's breath caught. The man gave the slightest nod. A silent acknowledgement, a reminder. Alexander started forward, weaving through traffic, ignoring the angry horns. But when he reached the spot, the figure was gone, vanished. As if he had never been there, all that remained was a folded piece of paper tucked under a lamppost. Alexander grabbed it, heart pounding. In neat, careful handwriting, it read, "We change names. We change faces. We change everything. That's our duty. But remember this. You were right. You were innocent. And you were never alone. Alexander stood frozen, the paper trembling in his hand. For the first time since his empire began to fall, he allowed himself to feel something he had buried for months: relief. The FBI officer, whoever he truly was, had done what no one else dared. He had believed. He had acted. And in doing so, he had returned Alexander Rhodes to the world, not just as a CEO, but as a man who understood what it meant to be saved when everyone else turned away. The city roared around him, indifferent as always. But Alexander walked forward with his head high, the note tucked close to his chest. Somewhere out there, his unlikely savior was already wearing a different face, blending into a different life, waiting for the next soul to lift from the pavement. And Alexander knew one thing with absolute certainty: he would never forget the man everyone else had walked past, the man who wasn't homeless at all, the man who had been his redemption. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful storytelling videos. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that miracles can come from the most unexpected places.